Imagine this. You wake up to sunshine streaming through the windows of your luxury home, the air crisp, birds chirping, the kind of morning where you think nothing could go wrong. But then your phone explodes, not with congratulations, not with Hollywood calls, but with a tidal wave of notifications, all screaming the same thing. Your former best friend, the one who saw every unfiltered corner of your life, has a tell-all about to drop. And this isn't gossip column fluff. It's receipts, screenshots, recordings, the kind of evidence that can't be laughed off or swept aside with a polished PR statement. That's the nightmare Meghan Markle is allegedly facing right now. And the person behind the bombshell? Jessica Mulroney, her old ride or die, the woman who stood beside her in the trenches through weddings, meltdowns, and royal wars. Now, Jessica's memoir, Behind the Veil. My story of Meghan and me is whispering its way through publishing circles, and early leaks suggest it's less sweet friendship memories and more controlled demolition of Meghan's carefully crafted empire. Stick around, because what's coming up isn't just about friendship gone sour. It's about manipulation, strategy, betrayal, and the possibility that the fairy tale image we've been sold for years was nothing more than a masterclass in smoke and mirrors. And if you think you've heard Meghan's story before, think again, because this version makes the Oprah sit-down look like child's play. But before we dive in, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This is one expose you're not going to want to miss, and trust me, by the end, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle. All right, let's get into it. So, Jessica Mulroney. To the public, she was Meghan's fashion-forward confidant, a woman always in the background, rarely in the headlines. But behind closed doors, she was more than a stylist. She was the fixer. She was the one who answered frantic 2 a.m. calls when palace walls felt like they were closing in. She was there in the messy, unfiltered moments, the tears, the screaming matches, the panic attacks, the "what the hell do I do now?" breakdowns. She wasn't just a friend, she was part of the architecture of Meghan's story. And that's exactly what makes her alleged book so dangerous. Because Jessica isn't speculating. She isn't piecing together tabloids. She lived it. She saw it. And now, according to publishing insiders, she's done keeping secrets. Let's start with the Netflix deal, because that's one of the biggest cracks Jessica supposedly pries open. The official narrative, we all know? Harry and Meghan were blindsided, cut off financially, scrambling to survive, then heroically striking a deal with Netflix as a way to tell their story and reclaim their narrative. That's the version Meghan sold to Oprah. That's the version the Sussex PR machine pushed worldwide. But Jessica's leaked notes suggest a very different picture. Allegedly, Meghan had the Netflix strategy lined up long before "we were left with nothing" ever left her lips. We're talking about messages, discussions, maybe even receipts, showing Meghan plotting out what kind of palace drama could be turned into binge-worthy TV before she and Harry even stepped down. This wasn't survival. It was chess, not reaction, but engineering. According to these whispers, Meghan wasn't just bracing for media storms. She was choosing which ones to prolong, which ones to leak, and which relationships to quietly ice out, all for maximum drama and maximum payout. And here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Sources close to Jessica claim she's holding proof that Meghan wasn't just a supportive wife while Harry penned spare. Instead, she was allegedly a co-architect. Behind the scenes, Meghan supposedly sat through late-night brainstorming sessions, sketching out which royal family members should take the biggest hits, how specific stories should be framed for maximum sting, even nudging Harry toward parallels with Diana to guarantee headlines. And if that's true, The idea of Harry as the lone truth teller, the brave son spilling his heart, collapses into something else entirely. The image of a man guided, shaped, maybe even used to serve a bigger strategy. But we're only scratching the surface. Because what has Meghan really terrified, according to insiders, is the so-called revenge list. Now, this part is chilling. Jessica's memoir allegedly details Meghan's private archive of grudges, a literal system of tracking every insult, every perceived slight, every person who questioned her. Not venting, not ranting, planning. Evidence suggests Meghan built a kind of digital war chest, emails, text logs, maybe even voice memos laying out exactly when and how she'd strike back. We're talking step-by-step media blueprints, which interviews to drop, which causes to spotlight, which emotional beats to play up, all designed to weaponize public sympathy at just the right moment. If that sounds cold and calculated, that's because it is. Insiders claim Jessica has first-hand accounts of Meghan rehearsing interview lines, testing phrasing to make them land sharper, more surgical, more headline-ready. This wasn't off-the-cuff authenticity. It was production. And then there's the possibility that Meghan recorded people without their knowledge. Let that sink in. Jessica allegedly says Meghan baited royals and palace staff into controversial conversations, hit record, and stored the files away as leverage. If true, that's not just manipulative, it's dangerous. It suggests Meghan wasn't simply surviving royal life, she was collecting ammo for her post-royal empire. And the irony? The friendship that could now destroy Meghan's image was allegedly torched not by betrayal, but by cold calculation. Remember 2020, when Jessica got caught up in that racism controversy involving a lifestyle blogger? Publicly, Meghan stayed silent, and that silence cost Jessica her career, her reputation, everything. But Jessica's book allegedly paints a much darker truth. She claims she begged Meghan for support, calls, messages, even handwritten letters, pleading for the same loyalty she'd always shown. And Meghan? She ghosted, cut her off, allegedly saw the controversy not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity to shed dead weight. And it gets worse. According to leaks, Meghan privately sympathised with Jessica's version of events, even agreed with her behind closed doors, before abandoning her when the backlash grew too hot. In other words, she wasn't just silent, she was two-faced. That was the breaking point. Jessica burned, Meghan walked away clean, and the friendship that had once been the cornerstone of Meghan's private world went up in flames. But Meghan didn't just move on. Allegedly, she erased Jessica, deleted photos, wiped birthday tributes, quietly scrubbed their history from her Instagram. To outside eyes, it looked like damage control. To insiders, it looked like panic. And that panic might be justified. Because Jessica's memoir isn't described as a story, it's described as a time bomb. A manuscript loaded with names, dates, receipts, screenshots, and recordings. One publishing insider said it reads less like a memoir and more like a thriller. Except the stakes are real. The characters are global figures, and the fallout could be catastrophic. Now here's the question. What happens if this book actually hits shelves? Early whispers say brands are already nervous. Streaming giants, publishers, fashion partners. Nobody wants to be caught holding the bag when this bomb drops. Meghan's empire isn't built on raw talent or royal duty. It's built on image. And if that image is shattered, the whole brand collapses. But the most devastating fallout might not be corporate. It might be personal. If Jessica's documentation proves Meghan didn't just support Harry, but actively manipulated him, steered him, used his pain for strategy, then the cracks don't just run through Meghan's public persona. They run straight through her marriage. Because once the world sees Harry not as a brave truth-teller, but as a pawn, the Sussex fairy tale doesn't just crumble, it implodes. And here's the twist. We're not even halfway through what Jessica allegedly has locked up in that manuscript. So buckle up, because in part 2, we're diving even deeper into the allegations. Meghan's early Hollywood climb, how every relationship was supposedly transactional, the claim that her royal wedding was treated not as a fairy tale but as a production staged for maximum optics. We'll also explore how Jessica says Meghan cherry-picked causes and charities not from passion, but for branding, social justice as PR currency, and yes, the receipts, the screenshots, the alleged recordings, the proof that could collapse everything Meghan has spent years constructing. Make sure you're subscribed, because part 2 is where the real detonations happen. Welcome back. If you thought part 1 was explosive, buckle in, because what we're about to unpack takes this saga from scandalous to downright catastrophic. We left off with Meghan's so-called revenge list, the Netflix plotting, and Jessica Mulroney's shocking claims of manipulation and betrayal. But that was just the appetizer. Now we're heading straight into the main course. Meghan's rise in Hollywood, the royal wedding that might not have been a fairy tale after all, and the receipts Jessica allegedly saved. The kind of proof that can take down reputations overnight. And before we dive in, quick reminder, hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you're watching live, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Jessica's memoir is revenge, or do you think it's the truth finally breaking through the surface? Because after what you're about to hear, your answer might change. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Meghan Markle in Hollywood. Jessica reportedly writes that long before Meghan ever met Harry, she was already playing a very specific game. According to leaks, Meghan wasn't floating around Hollywood hoping for her big break. She was strategic. Every relationship, every friendship, every connection was curated. The leaks claim Meghan even described fame as currency. Think about that. Not love, not passion, not craft. Currency. And in that worldview, people weren't friends or partners. They were investments. Some gave her media exposure. Some gave her networking doors. Some gave her stepping stones to bigger stages. And when they stopped being useful, they were quietly dropped. Jessica's manuscript allegedly spells this out in chilling detail. How Meghan analysed every new person she met in terms of utility. Who could advance her brand? Who could open doors? Who could give her credibility? And for those who couldn't offer much. Goodbye. This pattern, Jessica says, didn't end in Hollywood. It followed Meghan right into palace walls, which brings us to one of the most explosive allegations in the leaks, the royal wedding. To the world, it was a fairy tale. The overwhelmed bride, the teary-eyed groom, the kingdom united in celebration. But Jessica allegedly claims Meghan treated it less like the happiest day of her life, and more like a stage production. A carefully choreographed performance designed for optics, headlines, and maximum public approval. Jessica reportedly describes private conversations where Meghan dismissed the overwhelmed bride narrative as a role she had to play, while behind the scenes, she was controlling every detail for image value. What flowers would photograph best? Which friends should be positioned in view of cameras? Which music would generate the most emotional coverage? In public, it was love. In private, it was branding. Now, you might be thinking, every celebrity wedding has an element of performance. True. But according to the leaks, Meghan herself allegedly referred to the entire royal chapter of her life as a phase, not a duty, not a destiny, a phase, a performance with an expiration date. And then there's the question of causes and charities. On the surface, Meghan's activism has always appeared heartfelt. Women's rights, mental health, social justice. Noble, inspiring, progressive. But Jessica's manuscript allegedly drops another bombshell. Meghan didn't choose causes out of passion. She chose them out of PR value. According to Jessica, Meghan kept a list, a literal breakdown of which social issues had the best optics, which generated sympathy, which had the least backlash risk. Think about that for a second. Behind the speeches, the glossy photo ops, the heartfelt interviews, Jessica claims Meghan was running calculations. Not, what do I believe in? But, what plays best? And here's the kicker. Jessica allegedly saved proof. Screenshots of text conversations where Meghan discusses spinning media stories, notes from planning calls, forwarded emails related to Netflix negotiations. We're not talking vague anecdotes. We're talking timestamps, hard data, cold evidence. One publishing insider who claims to have seen early drafts described it as a memoir disguised as a prosecution case file. That's how much detail we're dealing with here. And that detail doesn't just hit Meghan. It threatens Harry too. Because if the allegations about Spare are true, if Meghan really was scripting emotional beats, steering Harry's grief and pushing parallels with Diana, then Harry's authenticity evaporates. The brave prince bearing his soul becomes the manipulated husband parroting someone else's strategy. And if that perception sticks, the Sussex brand crumbles, because their empire was built on one thing: credibility. The world believed Harry was finally telling his story, unfiltered, unspun. If Jessica proves otherwise, the brand isn't just bruised. It's over. Now let's circle back to the so-called digital arsenal, because this part could be devastating. According to leaks, Jessica's book alleges Meghan secretly recorded conversations with palace insiders, even royals themselves. Not openly, not with consent, but covertly. Imagine the fallout if that's true. Imagine proof surfacing that Meghan baited family members into saying questionable things only to stash the recordings away as future leverage. That's not survival. That's blackmail adjacent. That's creating an arsenal of potential bombs, waiting to be detonated. And here's where Jessica's own story comes full circle. Because remember, their friendship didn't implode over palace politics. It imploded in 2020, when Jessica got hit with accusations of racism. Jessica allegedly begged Meghan for backup, reminders of loyalty, phone calls, a statement, anything. And Meghan? Silent, ghosting her, letting her burn. But what makes it worse, according to early leaks, is the claim that Meghan agreed with Jessica privately. Messages that show Meghan sympathising, acknowledging Jessica's side of the story, before vanishing when the public turned against her. To Jessica, it wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated abandonment. And if that's true, then Meghan didn't just let her best friend drown. She pushed her head underwater. No wonder the memoir is being described as a time bomb. Now, think about the timing. Every time a rumour of Jessica's manuscript surfaces, eagle-eyed fans notice something strange. Meghan's old posts, tributes, photos with Jessica vanish from her Instagram. Deleted, scrubbed, erased, which, ironically, makes the rumours look even worse. Because if you're innocent, why purge the evidence? Why erase someone from your digital history unless you're terrified of what they might reveal? And media analysts are already calling it a PR disaster. Panic moves rarely play well. Some even claim Meghan's own legal advisors warned her not to go scorched earth. But she did. And now the erasure itself has become Exhibit A in the court of public opinion. Which leads to the million-dollar question. What happens if Jessica's memoir actually sees the light of day? Insiders say publishing houses are salivating. This isn't just another royal gossip book. It's receipts-driven, detail-packed, and if even half of it checks out, it could collapse the Sussex empire overnight. Brands are reportedly nervous. Streaming platforms and publishing partners don't want to be collateral damage in what could be the biggest reputation implosion since Diana's infamous Panorama interview. But here's where it cuts deepest. The personal fallout. Because if Jessica lays out proof that Meghan was pulling the strings all along, then Harry doesn't just look manipulated. He looks weak, used, exploited by the very woman he gave up his entire world to protect. That's not a fairy tale, that's a tragedy. And Meghan, the woman who sold the world on authenticity, struggle, resilience, suddenly reframed as a master manipulator, playing chess with people's lives. Not just royals, not just the media, friends, family, even her husband. So, is Jessica's book revenge? Absolutely. But is it also truth? That's the question that's going to haunt Meghan until the day this book hits shelves or gets buried by an army of lawyers. One thing's certain, if Jessica's memoir comes out in full, it won't just tell Meghan's story, it will end it. So, what do you think? Is Meghan the victim of a bitter ex-friend out for cash? Or is Jessica about to blow open the biggest royal scandal of the decade with receipts that can't be denied? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to hear where you stand on this one. And if you want more unfiltered, no BS breakdowns of the drama the mainstream won't touch, make sure you're subscribed. Because trust me, this is only the beginning.